Hopefully the recording this week works. We're live at Siftach for Coffee and Kabbalah, Parshat Vayechi, the last episode, the finale of Chumash Bereshit. Thank you, Siftach, for hosting and making this delicious, beautiful coffee. And thank you so much to today's sponsors, Karen Jacobs, for sponsoring the share in memory of your dear departed mother, Rachel Bas Kleina. Her neshama should have an aliyah, and we should only have good news in your family. And thank you, Michelle Falker, for sponsoring today's share in memory of your dear departed brother, Pinchas Elazar. His neshama should have an aliyah. And we also want to dedicate today's share to Ephraim Jackman, a neighbor of ours from neighbor of Efrat's, who tragically passed away and is being buried today in from Neve Daniel. His neshama should have an aliyah. We should see no more pain. Hashem should protect all the soldiers and comfort his family. And I hope for better times. And let's jump into Parshas Vayechi. Okay, so we're going to talk about, there's three topics today in this week's Parsha. To summarize the Parsha, Parshas Vayechi is similar to Parshas Chayei Sarah, where the name of the Parsha is about the life of Sarah, but the Parsha discusses the death of Sarah. And in this week's Parshas Vayechi, we have the name of the Parsha being, and he lived, but really it's talking about his death, because it says, and he lived, and Yaakov lived for how many years? 127. Shavas Mea, he lived for 17 years in Mitzrayim, and his total years of life were 147 years, and then he died. So the entire bulk of the Parsha discusses the deaths of three main characters in this in our story, in the story of Bereshit, in our drama. Okay, so the first death we talk about is Yaakov. Yaakov passes away. Before he passes away, he calls all of his sons and he gives them the famous blessings. Each son gets a unique and distinct blessing based on who they were, their strengths, their weaknesses, and who they are distinctly. Each one is given different blessings. Then Yaakov, right before he passes away, he also blesses his grandsons Ephraim and Menashe. And he actually blesses the blessing that we bless all of our children to Ephraim and Menashe is that all Jewish children will be blessed on Ephraim and Menashe, will be blessed to be like them, not to be like Yosef, not to be like any of the tribes, but specifically to be like Yisimcha Elokim. When I call my father for blessing on Yom Kippur, when a father blesses his son, the boys, he blesses them, Yisimcha Elokim Ephraim and Menashe, he puts their hand on his head, Hashem should make you like Ephraim and Menashe. And then for daughters, like Sarah, Rachel, and Leah. It's interesting that the side note is something beautiful I heard was that Yaakov specifically chose to bless all Jewish children to be blessed like Ephraim and Menashe, and not like Yosef, not like Yehuda, not like the other tribes, because only Ephraim and Menashe were born into the Egyptian culture, not born into Eretz Yisrael, into a holy family. They were born into Egyptian depravity. And Yaakov said the brachas that are going to come later on to these children, they're not going to be children. They're going to say, well, I can't be like Yaakov. I can't be like Yosef. I wasn't born to Tzaddik Yaakov in Eretz Yisrael. I was born in America. I was born in Galus. I was born with all these things. How can I be like him? But Ephraim, that's why he said, be like Ephraim and Menashe, who despite being born into Egyptian culture full of depravity, full of horrific and a very, very evil culture, and despite being in an affluent lifestyle, having all the luxuries in the world and all the temptations because their father was filthy rich, second to the king, all the temptations, they still remain true to their family and Torah values and heritage. So that's what we want you to be like. Somebody who was, yes, you're born into a difficult time. Yes, you're born through a lot of temptations. Yes, you're born into the darkest of exiles that we can see with anti-Semitism everywhere, but you can be like Ephraim and Menashe. That's a side point. Then right before Yaakov passes away, he calls Yosef, and this is we're going to talk about later. He makes Yosef swear to him 2 times that he will bury him not in Mitzrayim but in Israel, and that's what happens. Yosef gets permission from Paro to leave. He and all his brothers go. We spoke about the story last week where they get to the cave of Machpelah. They're about to bury Yosef, and they travel with Yaakov to out of Egypt all the way up to the cave of Machpelah nearby in Hebron. And before they come, Esau is blocking the cave, and that was that story. On the way, all of the kings of all the countries on the way took their crowns off their head and put it on the casket of Yaakov, like the Medrash says, and there is Yaakov's burial. Now, fast forward a little bit later, one more death that's discussed is really amazing. So Yaakov calls Yosef privately, blesses his sons, and then he tells Yosef, swear to me. And right after he makes Yosef swear, and Yosef says, I swear to you that I won't bury you in Mitzrayim, I'll bury you in Eretz Yisrael, he says, randomly, he starts to say, Va'ani bivoi mipad aram. He says, he starts to talk about Yosef's mother and where he buried her. in a seeming way to say that don't be, the Meforshim say that he was saying, Joseph might say, how could you ask to be buried in Hebron when you didn't even bury my mother Rachel there, right? How could you ask me to do that? So he apologizes or explains what was happening. So this is the other death and burial that we have in this week's Parsha. Interestingly enough is that the focus is a lot on where someone is buried, right? In Judaism, and we're going to talk about why. Why is it so significant to know where someone is buried, right? Their soul is the main thing that exists after the body passes away. The body disintegrates. Why does it matter so much to these tzaddikim where they were buried? To focus so much on, I only want to be buried in Eretz Yisrael, and Rachel, she was buried in right here. So let's read the pasuk about Rachel. Mani mivoim mipadan mesa alai Rachel, but Eretz Canaan, Baderech. I was traveling from Padan Aram, and on the way, Rachel suddenly passed away in childbirth of your brother Binyamin, right? The Eretz Canaan and land of Canaan, Baderech, on the way, Ba'od Kivratz Aretz, we were in the middle of the land, still traveling, but Lavo Efrata, this is where Efrat is mentioned in the Parsha, we're here in Efrat, they're traveling, they're not even in Efrat, the Ekbar Hashem, Baderech Efrat, I literally buried her on the way to Efrat. He Beit Lechem, in this place called Beit Lechem, very close to here, that's where Rachel Imenu was buried. And that's it. And Rashi says, the Ekbar Hashem, I buried her right there. I didn't even take her all the way to Beit Lechem Lachnisa La'aretz. And I know, V'yadati sheyesh b'lib chalai. We never spoke about this, but I know that your heart is heavy about this. Why didn't you bury my mother with you? Why did you only bury Leah and Maris Machpelah with me, where I'm going to be buried? Aval dalacha shal pia dibur kabarti sham. But know that I did it according to Ruach HaKodesh. Hashem told me this is where she wanted to be buried. Shetehei la'ezra lebaneh, so she can be a help to her sons. Kashe yigla osam, when Hashem puts them in Galus and exiles them, when Nebuchadnezzar exiles them, and they pass that road, that wayside where Rachel is buried, Yotza Rachel Akiva, Rachel's going to come out to on her grave and cry and weep for her children, and she will beg mercy from Hashem for them to save them from this exile. Shenemar Kol Barama Nishma V'Gomer, and he quotes from, I think it's Yirmiyahu, that her voice, Kol Barama Nishma, her voice is heard on high. That Hashem answers her, Hashem listens to her, and what is her merit? What is Rachel's merit to weep for her children? Her merit is that she says that I gave up everything. Rachel was in love with Yaakov. She waited 7 years to marry him. And at the last moment, she saw that her sister would be embarrassed and shamed if her father put them there and she didn't know the sign. So she gave her sister the secret sign that she and Yaakov had made beforehand to make sure that Lavan wouldn't trick him. And she gave up her love of her life. She said, I gave up everything I wanted for my children. You can do the same, Hashem. Put aside your will for your children to save your children. And Hashem listens to that cry. And because of Rachel sacrificing again, Hashem said that was who Rachel was. She sacrificed her will for her children, for others, for caring for others. And again, here, this is where Rachel wanted to be buried. We know that this is Rachel's essence. She wanted to be buried on the wayside, even though her ultimate spiritual greatness would have been to be buried with her ancestors, with her husband. She put that aside to be there, to be able to weep for her children when they were exiled later on in the future. And as a side point, that's also what we learn in Chassidut. That was the merit for why Ephraim and Menashe, her grandchildren, her son Yosef's children, got a double portion in Israel. Yosef has a double portion, and all of this was the sacrifice that Rachel made for her sister a while earlier. I don't want to make up days. Okay, so that is the Parsha. That is the burial part of the Parsha. Later on, after Yaakov is buried, we fast forward to Yosef on his deathbed. So again, this Parsha Vayechi about life really talks about a lot of death, a lot of pre-death, deathbed wishes. So Yaakov passes away. He wants to tell them when the end of days will be, when the Gula will be, but Hashem takes away his Ruach HaKodesh and he can't say it. And right before Yosef passes away, he calls this is the third to last pasuk in the whole Parsha, in the whole Chumash, where Yosef he sees that he soon is going to die, and he calls his brothers and he says, I'm going to die soon. Elokim pakod yifkod eschem. Hashem will remember you. Now, this is another code in this week's Parsha. We have two codes, Rachel's code, and this is a code that Yosef says, how will you know? And he's telling them now, you're going to remain in Egypt for a long time. You're going to be in exile, because this is what Hashem told Abraham, told us already. You're going to be here for a while, but Hashem will remember you and take you out. And the code is pakod yifkod. And that's why later on when Moshe came, he said, who are you, random guy born in Pharaoh's palace, that are telling us that you are from God? And he said, who sent you? And he said, Hashem sent me and said, Pakod Pakadati. And he delivered that code. They had saved those words for a few hundred years. And they said, oh, we know you're legit because we've been hiding these words with us, waiting for someone to say this code. And now we know that you're coming from Hashem. So he tells them, Hashem will remember you. And when Hashem remembers you, and he will take you out of this land, Yaakov, to the Eretz Yisrael, to the land Hashem promised you. And then he made them promise, and as Bnei Israel, all of the future generations, not the sons of all the children, to say, when Hashem remembers you, again he says that, take my bones out of this place. And so Yosef's request of being buried, it's his death. So again, this parsha discusses his death. But then the last pasuk is Yamas Yosef and Me'av Esher Shanim, and Yosef passed away at 110 years old, and they embalmed him. And they Visam Aaron ben Mitzrayim. They put him in a casket in a tomb in Mitzrayim. And we know that his tomb ended up being in the Nile River. And later on, a few hundred years later, when they left, Moshe retrieved the bones of Yosef by saying Ale Shor, because that was the blessing of Yaakov to Yosef, that he is an ox, and the bones rose from the Nile, and they took the bones of Yosef out of Mitzrayim, and they were buried here in Israel, in Shechem, right, a couple of hours away from here, where it's dangerous to go, but a bus goes every Rosh Chodesh at 1 a.m. Yeah, he's agreeing. It's okay. It's adorable. It's harmonizing. It's not disinterrupting. It's harmonizing. My brother-in-law at the Shabbos table, I love this line. When his wife, he says, when my wife interrupts me, it's not interrupting, it's harmonizing. Like when she shares at the table, and that's the best. He's the best, yeah. Sorry, pakod pakadati means I will remember. It's a double remembering. So zach, it's a yifkod. I'll remember them. So it's a double lashon. How do you say lashon? A double term analogy. He's so cute. You are harmonizing. He's giving his commentary. Yuda or his commentary. He's so cute. Okay, so that is the summary. That is a summary of this week's parsha. Now, obviously, one of the main questions in this parsha is how could a parsha that fully pretty much discusses death, be called Vayechi? We've answered that question before. I'll answer it in very short for today. So it depends. The real answer to how we can what life and death really is really what should understand what life and death really means. So understand this question, we need to know what does life and death truly mean according to Torah and Jewish values. If we measure, and Manis Friedman came and spoke about this, Rabbi Manis Friedman spoke in Efrat last year, and his whole talk was stop existing and live a life that matters. Because he discusses the difference between existence and life. And there's a very, very big difference because existing means being alive in a body, right? Living life to enjoy life to its fullest. And that type of existence, if existing means, if what living means, what being alive means, which is just existence, is just to enjoy life and live enjoy the life we live in, live a comfortable, enjoyable life, then that ends at death. That life does end at death. And then there's no life after death. But if life is more than that, and if life is what the Torah calls life, which is not living a comfortable life in this body, not just existing, but rather the impact that we make on the world. Rather, this is going back to the Parsha, by Yaakov's death. Oh my gosh, sorry. Hold her on your lap, she'll be fine. What? Oh, the gun. Maybe. She doesn't like it. So earlier on in the Parsha, it says that Yaakov Avinu, by the words where Yaakov died, there's an interesting lashon that Rashi comments on, and this is very famous, where it says that Vayigva Vaye'esov. When Yaakov died, it says he was gathered to his people. Rashi comments that everywhere else in the Torah where it uses the word Vayigva, it says Vayigva Vayamas. He was gathered and he died. But by Yaakov, it doesn't say the word and he died. And Rashi quotes the Gemara that says, from here we learn that Yaakov Avinu lo meis. Yaakov Avinu never died. But then the next pasuk right after says, and they embalmed him in oils and they put him in a casket. But he didn't die. So that's kind of creepy, right? If he didn't die. So that is that. So on the one hand, it literally says, it doesn't say the word Yamas ever about Yaakov. So how do we resolve this contradiction that it doesn't say Vayamas? He was just gathered and he didn't die, but then they embalmed him. So there's actually many, many answers about this. Some say that he didn't actually die then. He only died much later, and then they embalmed him later. But the Gemara answers that Yaakov Avinu lo meis. What does that mean? He didn't die? That his body died, but mazaro b'chaim atu b'chaim. His seed continues to live on, so he continues to live on. And this is such a powerful message, especially because we're commemorating the death of the passing of bodies of a few people today. but who they are didn't die. They didn't die. Their body passed on. Their existence. Their life is in a different form right now. Now their life is in the body is not there anymore, but they're still there. If somebody has 3 children and God forbid one passes away, they still have 3 children. Just one is not in the body right now. But that doesn't mean that now they only have 2 children. They still have 3 children. We still have 2 parents, even after God forbid, after Rahman al-Islam, something happens to one of them and their existence in the body no longer continues. So this is what it means. Yaakov Avinu lo meis. Now, Mazara b'chaim is usually translated as his children are alive. So his children continue to perpetuate his life. But what if someone doesn't have children? So then his life ends after death? Of course not. The children, Wabzara B'chaim, doesn't only mean his physical children. It means his deeds, his seeds, whatever he planted in the world, any impact he made on the world, anything that he stood for, what his life was all about. If his life had meaning and he made seeds in this world and impacted the world, all of that, any impact he made in the world, that continues to perpetuate forever. Any person's life he touched, anyone he impacted, any tree he planted for the world, for the next generation, any contribution he made to the world through his kindness, through his actions, through his deeds, through his intellect, through his inspiration, through just smiling at somebody, through helping another person, through connections he made with his family members, through people that he loved, all of those continue to live on. The relationships live on forever. The love continues to live on forever. And through that, the person continues to live on way after his body passes away. And that is why, and actually in Judaism, after a person's death, it says that when a person dies, only then do we see his true life's existence come out, right? Suddenly when someone dies, everyone gets to hear and see, and their impact is even multiplied after they pass away. And we see this all the time because in Judaism, we commemorate people, and the Rebbe said that the biggest thing we could do to comfort after passing, after tragedy and loss, is to continue to do and act in merit of the person. Because A, it comforts us, it helps us feel like we're doing something, and it actually helps the soul, and it perpetuates their existence in this world. So they're not lost anymore because their existence lives on in, like, Karen and Jack are doing something really beautiful in their community garden, and Jack called me yesterday and said they want to build a pergola, and they have a company that's called Pergola in memory of people. Yeah, they built pergolas in memory of people. So now there's this beautiful place for people to enjoy, and it's in memory of it's going to be, God willing, in memory of Roe Weiser. And that way he continues to live on by helping, by being a source of light for people. So we see this the most by the Rashbi, Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, who said that the day of his passing is a joyful day because on the day of his passing, all of his teachings, all the light he brought to the world are revealed way more than when he was limited in a body. When a person's limited by one body, by time and space, then their impact on the world is actually more limited than after they pass away. And of course, but that's on the one hand. So on the one hand, are the life, the true life, and so the message, let's summarize. The message for this for us, what can we learn from this, is that we learn so much from death. We learn, death teaches us how to live more than anything else in the world. First of all, it reminds us how to use our lives every one of our days. But even more than that, when we realize and understand that what actually lives on, that a person can continue to live after their body passes away, then it helps us realize that we want to continue to live a life where our impact in this world, to live a life that what we do with our day will be everlasting. To live a life where our impact is not just enjoying the materialistic existence that life has to offer, although it is wonderful, because that will end in our numbered days, but to live a life and make sure that every moment, or at least every day, every hour, we're leaving an impact on the world, on people around us, on the relationships, on people that we love, on our family, on spreading joy and spreading things, and to think about what legacy I want to live, what kind of impact on the world do I want to leave, and every single day to live with that. So by thinking about death, it actually contributes to our life and enhances the life and the life that we live, so that it's not just an existence. So the more we think about death, actually, the more we talk about death, when on dates, and the first question I used to ask a guy when I dated him was, what do you want to be remembered for when you die? And because that tells you so much when you hear about what the legacy, what's the one thing, you know who they are now, what they're living for, what their values are. The more, even though it's like morbid, it's not, because the more we talk about death, the more we understand who we want to be, the more we understand what kind of life we want to live now. So the message is to think about the legacy that we want to live, what was the meaning of our life, what is our purpose here, and what impact we want to leave on the world that will be everlasting. And that reconciles the name of the Parsha being, and he lived, even though he died, because even though he died through his death and through all of the deeds that he put in this world and all the children that he created and the beauty he created in Mitzrayim, the home of Torah, the wealth he brought, he continues to sustain us till today. Yaakov lives inside every one of us and in the world through us. So that is one part of the Parsha. Now we're going to move on to this topic of burial places. And to preface this class, it was a very impactful message for me, and specifically I was able to for me I connected it very much to mental health, to struggles with any type of, not just someone who has a mental health diagnosis, but to anyone struggling in a dark place, to anyone who's in a difficult, challenging time in their life. There is a very powerful teaching in this week's Parsha that is life-changing for me, from Yaakov and Yosef's requests of where they each wanted to be buried, and their disagreements and their philosophies of where they wanted to be buried. We learn in Chassidut is actually much deeper than just where they're buried, but it runs to their philosophy of how to help somebody when they're in a dark space, how to overcome our darkest places in life. And that was to jump right in. So, L'chaim. I forgot to say hello to everybody who is joining us watching this video. It means a lot. And if you're not subscribed to our channel, subscribe, because when we get to 1,000 subscribers, we could be monetized. And we're more than a third of the way there. And then the videos YouTube will give some sort of income for the videos and the views and the ads. Okay, so going back in this Parsha, in the beginning of the Parsha, where Yaakov is about to die, he finishes the blessings of his sons, he calls Yosef to him, and in the source sheets, it says, "V'yikru yimei Yisrael lamos," and he calls the son, and he sees he's about to die, he calls the son Yosef, and he says, these are the words, "Imna matzasi chen beinecha," if I found favor in your eyes, simna yadcha tachat yirechi, that's how they used to swear, they used to put their hand under their thigh, some say on their bris milah, and v'asisa imadi chesed ve'emes, do this eternal kindness for me, because I can't repay you because I'm going to be dead, right? I'm going to be past, my body will no longer be able to repay you in that way. Al natik bereini bit Mitzrayim, don't bury me in Mitzrayim. V'shachafti mavosai, and he continues, and I will lay with my fathers. It says, Sani min Mitzrayim, take me out of Mitzrayim. Ukvartani bikfuratam, bury me in their burial place. And what does Yosef answer? But obviously he's a great son, he loves his father. He says, Vayomar no yasad baracha, I'll do what you say. You got it, Dad, right? No problem, I'll bury you there. And then this is where the Mefarshim have a problem, because Yosef already promised his father, but then Yaakov continues to make him swear again, even though he already swore to him. He says, Vayomer hishavali, he says, swear to me. And he says, Vayishavalo, I swear to you. Vayishtachu Yisrael al Rosh Mita, and he puts his head on the bed, and there he died or didn't die, right? Afterwards, he was gathered and didn't die. So the question the Mefarshim have is, Yaakov, seemingly, he didn't trust his son, who already swore to him, put his hand under his thigh, swore to him that he's going to bury him, not in Mitzrayim, with his fathers. Why is he making him do it again? Now, there's many answers to this question that I won't go into right now. The one I want to talk about is where Chassidut says that this very deep, that there was, first of all, why is it so important where someone is buried? If we just finished saying that the main thing that continues is the soul, and the body is just the shell. The body is just the vehicle that carries the soul throughout this world. So in Chassidut, we learned that the body is actually not just a shell. That there's a lot of reasons for this, but the body is not just a shell. It's actually a home, specifically, uniquely chosen for each individual to house their neshama, and every individual's body is handpicked and crafted by Hashem with intention and there's no two bodies that are the same, and every body is matched with their neshama to be able to fulfill their specific mission in this world. Every neshama has a unique mission of what she's here to elevate in the world, how she's supposed to light up the world with her talents and her strengths, and her body is specifically matched to that mission. So her body and neshama are married to one another, are united, and have this beautiful bond throughout the world where they work together. Without the body, the neshama cannot impact the world. So the body does have a lot of significance. So where that body that was chosen by Hashem that for this role is buried is significant. Furthermore, we actually learn that when a person passes away, the neshama has 5 parts to it. There's a Tanya class that all about that. One of the parts of the neshama, called the nefesh, actually remains hovering over the body, remains by the body, which is why wherever the body is buried, when we go to that burial place of someone that we love, we feel their spirit there because their spirit is there. Their nefesh is there. Their nefesh remains by the body, even though it's detached. They have somewhat of a connection still after death, where the spirit of the person is still there and found there. Although we can connect to the person anywhere, we can feel it actually tangibly. The nefesh is the tangible soul. We can feel their presence there at their burial space. And that is the source of why, over the years, it's been so powerful. Jews have always gone to our fathers, the graves of our fathers of tzaddikim, to daven, right? Going to the graves of the avos, going to Hebron, going to all these places, because the Shekhinah is found there also on the grave of the tzaddik. So that's why it's very significant where someone is buried. So and davening by the grave of the tzaddik is very holy, because the tzaddik is although we can daven anywhere, it says actually all our tefillos anytime we pray, it goes through Ma'ar Samachela. It says all our tefillos go through Hebron and toward the coats on the base of Mikdash. So if you're there, you're just like, it's like one less distant, one less step, right? You're closer to the source. So of course we could daven anywhere in any place, but it's just special. And it also, we learn that we're impacted there. We are feeling more connected to the person. We feel more connected to Hashem there because of the Shekhinah and the presence there. So that is why being buried is so powerful. Now getting back to why did Yaakov make Yosef swear 2 times, although Yosef already swore to him? Did he not trust his son that he would bury him? So this is where it gets really deep. Yaakov and Yosef, being both had different philosophies. Oh, want to put her on your lap? I know if she's on your lap, she'll be calm. If you hold her on your lap and just cuddle her, she'll be good. Coco, you're a good girl. Yeah. Just calm her. Okay. So Yaakov and Yosef had 2 different philosophies on how they could best help their children through their dark times of galus. Just like Rachel wanted to be buried on the side of the road so that she can be there for her children when they're exiled later on, Yaakov and Yosef both said, we're about to enter a dark period of the Jewish nation. They're going through a few hundred-year exile. And Yaakov said, the best way I can help them is if I'm not in exile with them, if I'm on the outside and I'm in Eretz Yisrael, I can give them hope by praying for them, giving them Yeshua, by praying for them in Eretz Yisrael, and giving them chizuk from the outside, from Kabbalah, and saying there's hope, you're going to come here with me. But Yosef felt that his philosophy was very different. Yosef felt that he could actually help Bnei Israel much better by being with them in their darkness, by being a light for them in their pain, in their struggles, and in their darkness, not by being on the outside. So I'll describe them both, but I'll jump to the answer now. So the answer of why Yaakov made him swear is that Yaakov said, I know, Yosef, that you don't agree with me, that you think that it's better for me to be here buried in Mitzrayim to help the Jewish people. However, please do this. Please trust me. And this is the way I need to help them. However, I need to help them by being buried in Mitzrayim. That's the best way that I can help them. You can be buried in Mitzrayim, right? You can do what you want. So had Yaakov not made Yosef swear, it could be that Yosef would have said, okay, I'll bury him and we'll bring him to Eretz Yisrael, but after the Bnei Yisrael go through Galus. For now, we need his chizuk. We need him to be here with us in Galus to get through the hard times. And later on, when we leave exile, we'll take him out to Eretz Yisrael and bury him with his father. So Yaakov says, don't wait. Right now, I don't want to be buried even for one day in Mitzrayim. He says, Al-Mak bring me in Mitzrayim. Take me out now. I need to be on the other side to pull Bnei Yisrael out, to give them help. And for me, this was so profound, these 2 messages, because they're much deeper. They're philosophies of, to explain, to give background. We know that Mitzrayim is not just a place on the map, but Mitzrayim is a state of mind. Mitzrayim means Meitzar, constrictions. So Mitzrayim represents everything the Torah talks about leaving Mitzrayim, or how to get through Mitzrayim, how to overcome Mitzrayim. It's actually talking about how it also is telling us how to get out of our own personal Mitzrayim. Out of every time that the Jewish nation is in a dark place, every time we individually are in a narrow strait, in a limitation, in a stuck place in our life, in a challenging place in our life, in any dark place in our life that is called a Mitzrayim, we learn from the Torah how to overcome Mitzrayim. The 10 plagues are actually 10 steps to get out of a person lead with. We'll do that in a few weeks, Parsha and Parsha's Bo, and the Era and Bo. But for now, there's 2 philosophies and 2 powerful tools that we can learn from of how to get out of our own personal Mitzrayim. So Yaakov's perspective is really, really powerful. That's when you're in a dark place, and I'll talk about my personal struggle with mental health because it really resonated with how this was for me. So when I was in Yaakov's advice or philosophy is that when somebody's in a dark place, they can't pull themselves out. When somebody's in a dark space, you need someone on the outside to give them a helping hand because they're so stuck in the place. And the pasuk. So this when I had my first son 9 years ago. I had a very severe postpartum depression, antepartum depression, where I was really, really, really stuck. And my first therapist at the time, who was actually Chabad, she shared with me that there was a verse from the Gemara, Ein chovesh matir tzatmai. Tied up person can't untie himself. Because at that time, I was not only, it was such a dark place that everyone was like, just get a therapist, get better, go to a doctor, get medication, go to a psychiatrist. But I wasn't able to. So much so that even, not only was I not even able to leave my bed and leave the house and go to an appointment or even pick up the phone and make a phone call because I was in such a dark hole. Even if I had an appointment on Zoom, I would miss it. even though I was in my house, I had my computer because I was in such a dark place just doing that step. Or I was having a good day and I didn't want to go to that place and talk about it. So I was in such a dark space and I couldn't help myself. And I remember people saying, like, don't you want to get better? Like, if you don't want to help yourself, like, why should we try to help you? And that's so natural and normal to look at somebody who's struggling and being like, why can't you just go to your therapist appointment? And we often do that. And I used to think like that all the time. There's someone struggling, I'm trying to help you, and you're not taking the help that I'm giving you. And the reason for that, my therapist said, is that someone who's tied up can untie themselves, but someone who's not can easily come and untie them. Someone who's in a hole can't climb out, but someone on top can give them a hand and pull them out, because when you're not in the darkness, it's so easy for you. So for you, it looks so easy, but when you're tied up, you can't untie yourself because your hands are tied. So she said, someone who's depressed, sometimes it's so dark that the person can't even help themselves. And at that time, the way that I was able to overcome my depression was only because I had such an amazing support system. After a while, when they realized I'm just missing appointments, instead of just being mad at me, they were like, we're going to help you. I'm like, I need help. And so my really good friend at the time, and my husband would actually have to, my friend would come to my house, have to like schlep me out of bed and be like, what do you need? I'm going to help you get out of the house. What do you need to get out ready? What can I do for you? And literally step by step, bring me to the appointment, or I wouldn't have gotten there. And then through getting that initial someone pulling you out, I was able to finish climbing out. And Baruch Hashem, a year later, I was better. Obviously, it's a long journey, but that was such a powerful realization. And it made such a switch, because so often we want to look at someone else and wonder why they're not helping themselves, right? I want to help somebody who's struggling financially, and they're like, their organizations are giving them paper. I'm like, why aren't you filling out the paperwork you need? We want to help you with your, and they're like, they're in such a hard place in their life. They're struggling just to put food on the table. The last thing they can think about is filling out paperwork. So sometimes we often judge somebody and we're like, well, if you don't want to help yourself, why should we help you? Sometimes we're not in that problem. It's so we can go in and do that for them. So this message is so powerful from Yaakov, saying that if I'm in Galus with them, if I'm in Mitzrayim, I can't help them. I can only help them if I'm on the other side. If I'm there to put a hand down and schlep them out, to give them chizuk, to show them that there's someone on the outside who could do it. If I'm in the Galus, I'm useless to them. If I'm in the darkness, I need to be on the outside to be able to help them. So this was one powerful tool that, for anyone struggling, not just with mental health, because you don't need a diagnosis to be in a hard time. We live in a world of depression. We live in a world of gullus. Every day where we hear things that cause us and bring us down and bring us in darkness. And if we ever feel like there's any challenge in our life that we're stuck, and that I'm trying to get out of it, I'm trying, and I just can't get out of this stuck thing in my life, that's a time to reach out to someone who's not in that stuck place and ask them for help. And you'll see, and you think it's so hard for them, but it's not, because they're not in that stuck place, and it's so much easier for them. And it's another message is to when we see somebody who's over and over again in this stuck place, they're not helping themselves, we want to think that they don't want to get help, or they're just too lazy. They're not. They're just so overwhelmed and stuck that they can't help themselves. And a lot of times we feel like we're overstepping. I used to feel like, I'm over. Until I heard this talk, I felt like I'm overstepping if I step into someone's life and say, do you want me to do this for you? But I tried it. And I said to somebody who I know was depressed and not getting help, and I said, do you want me to make a therapy appointment for you? And I was so afraid of saying that, because boundaries, I'm Canadian, right? We don't like overstep into someone's life, and it's so like impersonal, and like I'm not close to them. And they were like, yes, that would be like, oh my gosh, like that would be amazing. And I did. And it was so easy for me, because like I just like, okay, here's a therapist, here's a person, you have an appointment, can you go yourself? Do you need me to pick you up, right? And they were able to climb out. So I was shocked how willing they were. And you'll be shocked how willing people are when you say, do you want me to help you find a therapist, even make you an appointment? Do you want me to pick you up and bring you to therapy? Do you want me to bring you to a psychiatrist? Because I'm sure it's so hard in your state to do it yourself. And the worst thing that could happen is they'll say, no, thank you, right? But most likely you'd be shocked at how willing they are, because they want the help, they just can't do it themselves. And this is such a powerful, powerful message from Yaakov Avinu to say, and that's why Yaakov made Yosef swear. So why did Yaakov make Yosef swear? Because Yosef's philosophy was different. Yosef said that my philosophy is that actually I can help them much better if I'm with them in the darkness, because if they're alone in this darkness, in Mitzrayim, in Gullus, they're going to feel abandoned. They're going to feel so afraid. I can help them by being there in the darkness with them, by staying with them and giving them chizuk. It's so powerful. And even when we're in a dark place in our life, think about any time that you were in this really dark place, when you felt alone and overwhelmed by any struggle in your life, not necessarily a diagnosis, if it's a struggle with a relationship, with a marriage, with a friendship, with a conflict with somebody, with a project that you can't overcome, with a health issue, with a tragedy, anytime that you're in a dark place, think about if somebody would come and just sit with you, someone that you love, just come and sit near you and say, I'm in this with you, we're in this together, and I'm going to be here until you get out of this space. I'm with you. Imagine the load that is lifted off of you in that moment, in that space. And this is what Yosef said. He said, Pakod Yifkod, Hashem will remember you, but until then, I'm with you. And when you go out, I'll come out with you. But until then, I'm staying in the darkness with you. I'm going to sit with you. I'm going to be there with you. I can't help you. I'm not trying to help you, but I'm there with you. That load is so powerful. And so in our darks, and for me, this was so powerful because it reminds me of Shiva. One of the hardest things to do is to pay a Shiva call. It's so scary. It's overwhelming. We don't know what to say. The number one thing people probably ask is, what do I say? For someone's first Shiva call, they say, what do I say? What do I say? And the answer is you say nothing. And you're not even allowed to say anything. You don't talk. You're not supposed to talk. And I always say, what do I say? What do I say? And that's probably why I used to miss Shivas, because I was so afraid of what I'd say. I didn't call my friends who had such a horrible tragedy in their life because I didn't know what to say. I was paralyzed. But the truth is, you don't say anything. Because Yosef's message is that you don't need to fix it. We need to be there with them. And in the Shiva call, the halacha is you're not actually allowed to talk until the person talks. If they talk, you can answer them, but you don't talk because they don't need you to fix it right now. There is nothing you can do. It's horrible. It's sad. You can be there with them. Be right next to them. Be there with them in their pain. And we learned that if you've ever heard the difference between sympathy and empathy, is this, that sympathy and empathy look so similar. Sympathy is, I feel bad. Sympathy is, I feel so bad for what you're going through. What can I do to help you? The difference between that is that sympathy is, the visual I have for that, I saw a cute visual once, is that there's somebody in a pit, stuck in a hole, because that's what it feels like when you're stuck. You're in a hole. And the person with sympathy is saying, sending down flowers and sending down love and saying, what can I get for you? I feel so bad for you. But empathy is climbing down into the hole. And empathy is not saying, I feel bad for you. What can I do for you? Empathy is, I'm so sad that you're sad. I'm in pain that you're in pain. I'm sad with you. I'm sad. Your pain hurts me too. Like that beautiful story of the Israeli Rav Levi, I think, Halevi, who went to the doctor with his wife. His wife had a injury on her foot, and he said, "Doctor, my wife's foot hurts us." That's what empathy is. Empathy is that not I'm outside and you're the one feeling the pain. I'm in the pain with you. I'm in the dark with you. If you're sad, I'm sad, and I'm going to climb into that hole with you and sit with you and not necessarily fix it. So often we want to reach our hand down and try to pray the person out, but we can't because right now the person is mourning. They're sad. Right now, they just need somebody to come into the hole and be there with them, and that load, knowing that I'm not alone, knowing I'm here with you, we're gonna get through this together. Imagine coming to someone, I'm with you, I'm sad, I'm with you in your pain, I'm here with you, and I'm gonna be with you until we climb out of this together. Imagine the joy, the burden lifting, the ease on the pain of the person. And that was Yosef's philosophy. And also, on another level, it gave them hope that they're going to leave because Yosef said, I'm going to be here. You're going to be in exile and I'm going to leave with you. So we know we're going to leave because Yosef said Hashem's going to remember us and he's going to be taken out. So, and Tzaddik's words always are fulfilled. So we know that's going to happen soon. So I'm waiting for that fulfillment. And in my opinion, they're not contradictory. It's not one or the other. It was more that we need both of them. In any darkness, in Mitzrayim, we needed both. We needed a person on the outside to advocate for us on the outside, to schlep us out, and to be on the outside, not stuck with us, to help us. For Yaakov to advocate and daven for us, to urge Hashem to make the gullus shorter, which he did, and to schlep us out of the darkness. All right, we need someone to pull us out of our house and bring us to the appointment, someone to pull us out and push us to the first group. But we also need somebody. We also need to feel like we're not alone. We also need to have somebody with us, sitting beside us, just holding our hand and being there with us in the darkness, not necessarily fixing it, right? In parenting, and this is like such a challenge because in parenting, we want our child to turn to us. They're sad about something. Something horrible happened to them. We want to fix it, but what often that they need before fixing it is to know that we're sad with them. And this happened to me this week. My 6-year-old is new to this school. So he was saying that he doesn't like going to school because he has no one to play with at recess. No one lets him play with them. My heart was broken. I was up the whole night, just literally the whole night, just being sad that my son is alone every day by all the recesses and no one wants to play with him or no one lets him play. So my first reaction the first few days was just like, try to fix it. Like I made play dates with all the kids, brought him over friends, sent him with candy, sent him with things to school, told the teacher to make sure the friends are friends with him. But then I realized that that's not helping him right now. In the future will, but right now, I just held him. For the next day, I realized what he needs. So I held him and I came home and I said, that is so sad. That must feel so lonely. I'm so sad for you. And I just held him tight. I said, once, when I was little, I also had no one to play with, which is true. I was in a camp and I didn't know anyone. And it was so hard to feel so alone. That's what was really, really sad. I said, you probably feel so sad. I'm so sad that you feel that way. And I was just holding him and he like melted in. He felt loved. We sat there for 15 minutes or 20 minutes. I was just like showing him how much hurt I feel for him and empathizing his feeling. And that was it. He was so happy afterwards. He's like in the best mood. We played together and he got it out and he felt like, because the burden was like, oh, my mom knows my pain. Someone feels my pain with me. My mom's going to make this better. And then we can move on to the next stage of pulling you out, of helping you make the situation better, right? But the first step is so important, just to be with somebody and not necessarily to say something. So these are two powerful tools I felt to help anybody who's struggling with any struggle in their life, whether it's mental illness, any darkness, any space in their life, any tragedy, to know how to help another person, two tools, like Yaakov, and to be like Yaakov. We could be the Yaakov and the Yosef for them, but even more than that, for ourselves in the darkness, to know that we can reach out, that if we could reach out to somebody who's not in that space, they can help us, that we shouldn't be afraid to reach out to somebody, because for them, it is so easy just to give us a hand and give us a little push out. And the second part is, how do we, it's hard to sometimes say, I just need you to be here with me. But first of all, to know when I just need a hug, to know, be able to call, right? I have people here call me, and you can all do that. All of you should do that. If you ever need, call me up and say, I need a hug. I will come over and meet you and give you a hug, right? And that's always good to know. I just need a hug. I don't necessarily need to fix it. That's one part. But even more than that, on a deeper level, that having a Yosef, this is where it gets even more deep. That Yosef being in the pit with us is not necessarily only having another person standing there through you in your pain, but it's even remembering, we learned that every one of us has a piece of Yosef inside of us. Throughout the Torah, a few times in Tehillim, we're called Yosef. The Jewish nation is called Yosef because all of us have a spark of Yosef inside of us. And so to remember that even if we're in the darkest space, even if we feel like alone and we feel like we'll never get out of this dark space, and that this feels like this, it's never going to get better, to remember that Yosef's bones are inside of us, and Yosef's bones are that spark of light inside my soul. That I have a part of my soul that has all of the koach, that has all of the light to get out of this dark situation. That here with me, it's not a lost cause. I'm not dark forever. That here